ever caught on camera. In just 39 seconds, one comment would shatter the illusion and turn a friendly chat into an absolute disaster that nobody saw coming. The studio lights were blazing hot that evening. Jonathan Ross sat across from Meghan Markle, his signature grin plastered across his face as the audience settled into their seats. This was supposed to be easy. A light conversation, some laughs, maybe a few stories about life in the spotlight. That's what everyone expected. But from the very first question, something felt off. Jonathan leaned forward, his tone warm and welcoming. "So lovely to have you here tonight. Really, we're all so excited to hear about your new projects. Let's start simple, shall we? Nar, tell us what you've been working on lately." Meghan shifted in her seat, her smile tight. "Well, Jonathan, I think the real question is why British television is so obsessed with asking women about their work instead of recognizing their value as human beings." The audience went quiet. Jonathan's eyebrows shot up, but he kept smiling. He'd dealt with difficult guests before. This was nothing he couldn't handle. "Right. Well, that's certainly one way to look at it," he said, chuckling nervously. "But I ask all my guests about their work, men and women alike. It's sort of the whole point of having people on the show, isn't it? To talk about what they're doing." "Is it, though?" Meghan shot back. "Or is it just another way to commodify people's lives for entertainment?" Jonathan blinked. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't banter. This wasn't playful. This was something else entirely. "I mean, you're on a talk show," Jonathan said, his voice still friendly but with a slight edge creeping in. "That's literally what we do here. We talk. About things. Your things. My things. Whatever things people want to hear about. Nobody forced you to come on, love." "Love?" Meghan repeated, her voice sharp. "Did you just call me love?" "It's a term of endearment," Jonathan explained, his hands raised slightly. "Very common here in Britain. I call everyone love. The cameraman's love. The producer's love. My mum's love. It's not meant to be offensive." "But it is offensive," Meghan insisted. "It's diminutive. It's patronizing. It's exactly the kind of casual misogyny that women have to deal with every single day." The audience was dead silent now. You could hear the cameras whirring, the crew members shuffling behind the scenes. Jonathan's smile had faded, replaced by a look of genuine confusion. "All right, let me get this straight," he said slowly. "You came on my show, I asked you about your work, and somehow I'm the bad guy here?" "You're not listening," Meghan said, her voice rising. "That's the problem. You're so used to being the center of attention that you can't even hear what I'm saying." Jonathan took a deep breath. "I am listening. I've been nothing but polite and welcoming since you sat down. I've asked you normal questions that I ask every guest who comes on this show, and you've responded by accusing me of being obsessed, commodifying people, and being a misogynist. So forgive me if I'm a bit confused about what's happening right now." "There it is," Meghan said, pointing at him. "The defensive male ego. Can't handle being called out, can you?" "Called out for what?" Jonathan's voice was louder now, his patience clearly wearing thin. "What exactly have I done wrong here? Please, enlighten me and everyone watching at home." Meghan stood up slightly in her chair. "You've created an environment where women are expected to perform for your amusement, where we're supposed to smile and be grateful for the opportunity to sit in your presence and answer your questions like good little guests." Jonathan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is absolutely mental. You realize people would kill for this opportunity, right? To be on this show, to promote whatever it is you're promoting, to reach millions of viewers. And you're sitting here acting like I've personally wronged you by doing my job." "And there's the entitlement," Meghan fired back, "thinking that your platform is some kind of gift that people should be grateful for." "It literally is," Jonathan exclaimed. "That's exactly what it is. That's how television works. You have something to promote. I have an audience. We have a conversation. Everyone wins. Except apparently not tonight, because you've decided to turn this into some kind of bizarre confrontation for reasons I genuinely cannot fathom. The audience was watching like spectators at a tennis match, heads swiveling back and forth between host and guest. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked fascinated. All of them were completely silent. Maybe if you spent less time talking and more time listening, you'd understand, Meghan said coldly. Listening to what? Jonathan demanded. You haven't said anything of substance. You've just thrown accusations at me since the moment you sat down. I asked you about your work, and you went off about commodification. I called you love, which again is completely normal here, and suddenly I'm a misogynist. What am I supposed to be listening to exactly? The subtext, Meghan said. The underlying power dynamics at play. Jonathan rubbed his face with both hands. Oh my God, this is a chat show. A chat show. There are no power dynamics. There's just you, me, some cameras, and an audience wondering what on earth is going on. Of course you'd say that, Meghan replied. People in positions of privilege never see their own privilege. Privilege, Jonathan repeated flatly. Right, yes. I'm so privileged sitting here trying to have a normal conversation while you insult me repeatedly on live television. That's definitely what privilege looks like. You're mocking me now, Meghan said, her voice icy. I'm not mocking you, Jonathan shot back. I'm genuinely baffled. Completely and utterly baffled. I've interviewed hundreds of people. Thousands, probably. Never, and I mean never, has anyone reacted like this to basic small talk. Meghan crossed her arms. Maybe because I'm the first person brave enough to call out your behavior. Brave? Jonathan's voice went up an octave. Brave would be actually answering a question. Brave would be having a real conversation instead of hiding behind buzzwords and accusations. This isn't brave. This is just rude. And there it is, Meghan said triumphantly. A woman stands up for herself, and suddenly she's rude. No, Jonathan said, wagging his finger. Don't do that. Don't make this about gender. This is about you being unnecessarily hostile to someone who's done nothing but welcome you onto his show. If a man acted like this, I'd call him rude too. In fact, I have. Multiple times. Because rudeness isn't gendered. Everything is gendered, Meghan insisted. Not this, Jonathan practically shouted. Not a simple question about what you've been working on. That's just polite conversation. That's what humans do when they meet each other. They ask questions and listen to answers and try to find common ground. They don't immediately jump down each other's throats about power dynamics and privilege and subtext, the audience started to murmur. Some people were nodding along with Jonathan. Others looked shocked at the escalating tension. I think we're done here, Meghan said, starting to stand up. Oh, we're done all right, Jonathan agreed. Because I've tried. I've really tried to make this work. But you clearly came here with an agenda that has nothing to do with having an actual conversation. My agenda is speaking truth to power, Meghan declared. Jonathan laughed out loud. I'm a talk show host. I tell jokes and chat with celebrities. I'm not the government. I'm not some evil corporation. I'm just a bloke with a show trying to do his job. What power do you think you're speaking truth to? The power of the media establishment that props up patriarchal systems, Meghan said, as if it were obvious. Right. Because asking about your latest project is definitely propping up patriarchy, Jonathan said, his voice heavy with sarcasm. Not the actual systems of inequality in the world. No, it's me, sitting here with my questions and my audience. That's the real problem. You're trivializing serious issues, Meghan accused. I'm not trivializing anything, Jonathan protested. I'm just pointing out that you're attacking the wrong person. If you want to fight patriarchy, brilliant. Go for it. But I'm not your enemy here. I'm literally just trying to do an interview. That's exactly what someone benefiting from the system would say, Meghan countered. Jonathan stared at her in disbelief. So now I can't even defend myself without it being proof that I'm part of the problem? That's circular logic. That's completely unfair. Fair? Meghan laughed bitterly. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about how women are constantly interrupted, talked over, and dismissed in spaces like this. I haven't interrupted you once, Jonathan exclaimed. Not once. You've been talking nonstop since you sat down, and I've listened to every word, even though most of those words have been insults directed at me. See, there you go again, Meghan said, shaking her head, making yourself the victim. I'm not making myself anything, Jonathan said through gritted teeth. I'm simply stating facts. You have accused me of multiple things. I have tried to respond reasonably, and somehow that makes me the bad guy. Explain that to me, please. I use small words because clearly I'm too privileged and small-minded to understand. Oh, for crying out loud, Jonathan muttered. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You know what? Fine. If you want to leave, leave. I'm not going to sit here and be lectured about patriarchy because I asked you what you've been working on. I will leave, Meghan said, fully standing now, because I refuse to participate in this circus any longer. Circus? Jonathan stood up too, his voice incredulous. You're the one who turned this into a circus. I was perfectly happy to have a normal, pleasant conversation. You're the one who decided to make it weird. Weird, Meghan repeated scornfully. Calling out injustice is weird to you. There is no injustice here, Jonathan exploded. I asked you about your work. That's it. That's the big crime you're so upset about. A completely normal, standard question that every single guest gets asked. Meghan grabbed her microphone pack and started unhooking it. I don't have to sit here and take this. Take what? Jonathan's arms were spread wide now. Polite questions? Basic human interaction? What exactly are you not taking? Your disrespect, Meghan said firmly. I haven't disrespected you. Jonathan's voice echoed through the studio. I've been nothing but professional. You're the one who's been disrespectful. To me, to this show, to everyone who worked hard to make this happen. The producer was frantically gesturing from off camera, trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or let this play out. The audience sat, frozen, unable to look away from the train wreck unfolding before them. I'm leaving, Meghan announced, dropping her microphone pack on the chair. Fine, Jonathan shouted. Go, because honestly, this has been the most unpleasant interview of my entire career, and that's saying something because I once interviewed a man who threw a chair. That says more about you than it does about me, Meghan retorted, stepping down from the stage area. Does it? Jonathan called after her. Does it really? Because from where I'm standing, it says that you came here looking for a fight, and when I wouldn't give you one, you invented reasons to be offended. Meghan turned back to face him. You just don't get it. You're right, I don't, Jonathan agreed loudly. I don't get how asking someone about their work is offensive. I don't get how being friendly is disrespectful. Matt, I don't get how doing the exact same thing I do with every guest somehow makes me the villain in your story. Because you refuse to examine your own biases, Meghan said. My biases, Jonathan said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Right. My terrible bias of wanting to have a conversation. How awful of me. How absolutely dreadful. Someone call the police, Jonathan Ross asked a question. Mock me all you want, Meghan said. But history will prove me right. History? Jonathan threw his hands up. History isn't going to remember this at all, because nothing happened. We had the beginning of an interview. You got offended by absolutely nothing, and now you're leaving. That's the whole story. There's no grand conspiracy, no patriarchal oppression, no media establishment plot. It's just a failed interview because one person couldn't handle basic politeness. I'm done listening to this, Meghan said, turning toward the exit. Of course you are, Jonathan called out, because listening might require acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, you overreacted to a simple question. And we can't have that, can we? Much easier to storm off and pretend you're some kind of martyr. Meghan stopped walking. You know what your problem is, Jonathan? Oh, please tell me, he said, gesturing dramatically. Add it to the list. Apparently I'm a misogynist, privileged, disrespectful, and part of some patriarchal media establishment. What else am I? You're small, Meghan said quietly. Small-minded, small-hearted, small in every way that matters. The audience gasped. That was a direct, personal attack. No subtext, no theory, just a plain insult. Jonathan's face went red. Get out. I'm already leaving, Meghan said. No, I mean really get out, Jonathan said, his voice shaking with anger. Security, please escort our guest off the premises. She's clearly lost any sense of professionalism or basic human decency. You can't kick me off, Meghan said, eyes wide. I absolutely can, Jonathan replied. This is my show. You came on as a guest. Guests who insult the host get to leave. That's how this works. That's how any of this works. 2 security guards appeared from the wings, looking uncomfortable but professional. This is outrageous, Meghan sputtered. You know what's outrageous? Jonathan said, his voice deadly calm now. Coming onto someone's show and attacking them for no reason. That's outrageous. Being so wrapped up in your own narrative that you can't even have a civil conversation. That's outrageous. Insulting someone who invited you into their space and tried to treat you with respect. That's outrageous. I was speaking my truth, Meghan insisted, as the security guard stood nearby. Your truth is delusional, Jonathan said flatly, and I'm done entertaining it. Gentlemen, please show her out. You'll regret this, Meghan warned. The only thing I regret, Jonathan said, is wasting a perfectly good interview slot on someone who had no intention of actually participating in good faith. Now please leave before this gets even more embarrassing for everyone involved. Meghan looked around at the silent audience, at the cameras still rolling, at Jonathan Ross standing firm with his arms crossed. For a moment, it seemed like she might say something else, might launch into another accusation or justification. But then she just turned and walked toward the exit, the security guards following at a respectful distance. The studio doors closed behind her with a heavy thud that echoed through the space. Jonathan stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed doors. Then he turned back to the audience, running a hand through his hair. Well, he said, his voice slightly hoarse. That was something. A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. I want to apologize to all of you, Jonathan continued, addressing the audience directly. You came here expecting entertainment. Maybe some laughs. Certainly not whatever that was. I genuinely tried to have a normal conversation. I asked standard questions. I was polite. I was friendly. And somehow, it all went completely sideways. The audience started to applaud, slowly at first, then building to a genuine ovation. Thank you, Jonathan said, looking touched. I appreciate that. I really do. Because for a minute there, I was starting to wonder if I'd lost my mind. If somehow I'd become this terrible person without realizing it. But then I remembered that I've done this job for years. I've talked to thousands of people, and never, not once, has a simple question about someone's work turned into that. More applause. So let's just chalk this up to a very strange night, Jonathan said, attempting to recover some semblance of normalcy. One of those things that happens in live television sometimes. Although usually when things go wrong, it's a technical issue, not a philosophical meltdown. The audience laughed, and Jonathan smiled, seeming to relax slightly. Right then, he said, clapping his hands together. I think we need a commercial break. When we come back, we'll have our musical guest, and I promise you, we will have a completely normal, pleasant time with absolutely no discussions of power dynamics or patriarchal systems. Sound good? The audience cheered their approval. Brilliant, Jonathan said. We'll be right back. The moment the cameras cut, Jonathan's smile faded. He walked off stage, shaking his head, while the crew scrambled to figure out how to fill the time that was supposed to be occupied by a full interview. Backstage, The producer caught up with him. "Are you okay?" she asked. Jonathan nodded slowly. Yeah, I'm fine. Just baffled. Completely baffled." "What was that?" "I have no idea," the producer admitted. "We had a pre-interview. She seemed perfectly normal. Pleasant, even. Then she sat down, and it was like a switch flipped." "Tell me about it," Jonathan muttered. "One second we're doing the usual chat show thing, the next I'm being accused of every ism under the sun." "You handled it well," the producer offered. "Did I?" Jonathan asked. "Because it felt like I lost my temper there at the end." "She called you small," the producer pointed out. "After accusing you of misogyny and mocking you repeatedly, you were well within your rights to lose your temper. Honestly, you kept it together longer than most people would have." Jonathan sighed. "I just don't understand what happened. What did I do wrong?" "Nothing," the producer said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. You asked a standard question, and she went off the rails. That's on her, not you." "But why?" Jonathan wondered aloud. "Why come on a show just to attack the host? What's the point?" The producer shrugged. "Who knows? Maybe she wanted to make a statement. Maybe she's going through something. Maybe she genuinely believes all that stuff about power dynamics and media establishments. Either way, it's not your responsibility to figure it out." "I suppose not," Jonathan agreed. "But it's going to be all anyone talks about tomorrow." "Probably," the producer admitted. "But they'll be talking about her behavior, not yours. Trust me, you came off looking like the reasonable one." Jonathan laughed humorlessly. "That's a low bar to clear after tonight." Back in the studio, the audience was buzzing with conversation. Everyone had an opinion about what they'd just witnessed. Some felt bad for Jonathan. The others were shocked by Meghan's behavior. A few tried to defend her, suggesting maybe there was context they were missing. But most agreed it had been one of the strangest things they'd ever seen on television. The makeup artist approached Jonathan with a powder brush. "Need a touch up before we go back on?" "Please," Jonathan said, tilting his face up. "Make me look like someone who hasn't just been called small-minded on national television." The makeup artist smiled sympathetically. "For what it's worth, I thought you were incredibly patient." "Thanks," Jonathan said. "Though I'm not sure patience is what people will remember about tonight." "They'll remember that you tried," she said, dusting powder across his forehead. "You really tried to make it work, and she wouldn't let you. That's not your fault." Jonathan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The truth was, despite everyone's reassurances, he felt rattled. He prided himself on being a good interviewer, on making guests feel comfortable, on creating entertaining television. And tonight, he'd failed at all of that, even if it wasn't technically his fault. "2 minutes," a crew member called out. Jonathan took a deep breath and headed back to his chair. The audience applauded when they saw him, which helped lift his spirits slightly. He waved and smiled, trying to recapture some of the energy from before everything went wrong. The musical guest was already set up on the other side of the stage, looking slightly nervous. Jonathan caught their eye and gave them an encouraging nod. At least the rest of the show would go smoothly. Probably. Hopefully. As the commercial break ended and the cameras came back on, Jonathan pushed all thoughts of Meghan Markle out of his mind. He had a show to finish, an audience to entertain, and a reputation to maintain. One disastrous interview wouldn't define him, even if it might define his week in the tabloids. "Welcome back," he said, his professional smile firmly in place. "Now, after that rather unexpected turn of events, I think we could all use some music. Please welcome our fantastic musical guest." The band started playing. The audience cheered, and slowly, mercifully, the show found its rhythm again. But in the back of Jonathan's mind, the question remained, echoing like a persistent drumbeat. What on earth had just happened? The answer, he suspected, was something he'd never fully understand. Some moments in television are inexplicable,